Hello everyone and welcome to the 50th anniversary of Sun and Fun. My name is Lori Bradner and we are broadcasting live and in the clear from the Central Florida Aerospace Academy right here at Lakeland Linder International Airport. We are so excited today, number one, to be celebrating 50 years of Sun and Fun. And I have the honor today to be here with Colonel Gary Dahlke from the Civil Air Patrol. Colonel, thank you so much for being here today. We are so thrilled to have you. And we are just, I tell you what, the excitement in the air, the celebration as we celebrate 50 years of Sun and Fun is amazing. And Colonel, I always like to start these interviews because I want to know, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got involved with aviation and your interest in aviation and space. Can we start there? We'll start back at the beginning.
We want to start at the beginning?
We'll start at the beginning. Let's start at the beginning. Okay, so go ahead.
Yes, so this started many years ago. I was in elementary school. It was the summer vacation between second and third grade.
Okay.
So I'm watching.
Few years ago.
Yeah, not too long ago. I'm watching television and I see CBS News breaking into the regular programming covering a space launch. This was the Gemini 4 mission, which launched in June of 1965, and it was amazing to me. I wasn't really aware of a space program until this comes onto the television, and I'm watching this news report, and Walter Cronkite, of course, the iconic news reporter, is reporting on it. And I'm just amazed that we're putting astronauts into space, and so I'm enthralled by this and following it. And from that point on, I was interested and read up about it. I checked out virtually every book in the library that you could find on the subject of space exploration and just continued to follow the entire program from that point forward. And then of course I had to go back and get caught up on America's early space program and learn about the original 7 astronauts and how the program got started, and then followed it through the moon landing. I watched Neil Armstrong set foot on the moon on television. And it was just, there are certain events that just get seared into my mind, and seeing Apollo 11 launch and then land on the moon, that's very much ingrained in my memory. And then the first time I learned about a space program when I saw Gemini 4 being covered on television.
I love it. So we can, Walter Cronkite was the start of
you could credit him perhaps.
Of you becoming a space geek.
Yes,
as
correct.
You said yourself.
Right.
That's awesome. And I know we were talking before the broadcast that yesterday we celebrated, it was the anniversary of the launch of Apollo 13.
Right.
And you have a special interest in
Well,
that.
sure, because I, back in 1970, I think from the moment I learned about the space program and learned about rockets launching from the Cape and Kennedy Space Center, I'm going, well, I want to go see this. I want to go there.
Okay.
And so I bugged my family, my parents for many years to try and get this to happen. And it just so happened that the occurrence of me coming here was over Easter vacation.
Okay.
And the other family members then came in, and so we had a pool of resources to get this kid to Kennedy Space Center. And so finally my mom said, somebody take him there, okay, so he'll stop bugging me.
Right.
So we did, and some of my brothers and sisters went up here and took me through, and we took the tour of the Cape. You get on the bus, and we drive right past pad 39A, and there's Apollo 13 sitting on the launch pad. So there I got to see it, and then it launched it was a few days later.
Right.
So I'm following it on television, and then of course we understand what happened on Apollo 13.
Right. Yep.
And I can remember the morning that it happened, I'm on the bus, and some of my friends are saying, hey Gary, tell us, because I was like the source of space information. So they're saying, how's Apollo 13 doing? Nobody else knew about it. None of them, and I said, there's an explosion that happened and the crew might not get back. And they were like, oh, wow, we did not know this. So I was kind of like feeding them the information. And I was just getting it from the newspaper and the news reports and things like that. But I was sort of the source of that.
I love it. Now tell us a little bit about your career. Colonel, tell us about your military career and fill us in there. So
I graduated in 1975 from high school. And in my high school years, I'm trying to think, well, how do I turn this into a career? This interest that I have in space. And engineering is a good field to go into. And at the time, I made a self-assessment, and I'm thinking, I am not ready for this. You know, based on my grades and my personal self-discipline, I am not ready for this.
Okay.
So my brother was in the Air Force, and he worked on missiles in the Air Force. You know, and he would come home on leave and show pictures of, you know, all the cool stuff he was doing with missiles.
Right.
And I'm thinking, well, you know, a missile is very similar to a launch vehicle. It's just the only difference is what you put on the top of it.
Right.
You take the bomb off the top, and you put a satellite or a payload on the top, and you've got a launch vehicle for a space mission. So I thought I could join the Air Force and get some experience in missile technology, and then that could help get me on the path. So that's what I did. In my senior year, I talked to an Air Force recruiter. They had openings in ballistic missiles. Okay. And I go, wow, that's what I should be doing. That should I be doing. Little did I know that that was one of the most demanding programs academically that I could have gotten myself wrapped up into.
They didn't tell you that.
They didn't tell me that part. No. But it was like, you're going to do all this cool stuff once you graduate. Sure. So I'm going, well, sign me up, man. So a guaranteed job. You know, back then you could sign up ahead of time, and they say you're guaranteed training in this field. If you flunk out of this field, you're still in the Air Force, but we'll find something else for you to do to get you to meet your contract obligation.
Gotcha.
And so that's sort of the incentive that the Air Force gives you, and it gave me. I locked into that. I said to myself, I got to get through this school in order to get to what I want to be. Right. And so that was my goal, and that was the motivation for me to buckle down and study hard and get through the school.
That's awesome. How long did you serve, sir?
I was 8 years on active duty and 4 years in the reserves.
Thank you.
So
Thank you for that.
I appreciate that.
I know you're in a flight suit.
Yes.
And I want to switch gears if I can.
Yes.
I noticed your Civil Air Patrol patch.
Sure.
So tell us a little bit about your involvement with Civil Air Patrol. And I know that you're doing forums here.
Yes.
And you're going to be talking about that. So can we switch gears a little bit and talk
so
about
I can
that?
right. Well, I'll go back to when I joined CAP, which is another amazing experience in and of itself. So jump forward a few years. I completed Air Force military service, and then I enrolled in college. I attended Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, and upon graduation, I initially was planning to go back in the service. I had 8 years of active duty, and I'm thinking, well, I put this to good use. So I applied for OTS. And the Air Force shut down the OTS program because they had all the officers that they needed at that time. And so it was like, here I am with my application, and the recruiter says, OTS is suspended until further notice. And no idea how long it would be before it would start up again.
Right.
So when that happened, I flooded the country with applications and resumes into the aerospace industry.
Okay.
With all the companies that are famous, Boeing, McDonnell Douglas, Lockheed Martin. Back then it was Martin Marietta.
Right.
All these aerospace companies. And I got an interview with what was then the Martin Marietta Astronautics Group in Denver, Colorado. And they needed people to work on a new program they were developing called the Titan IV. And it was a rocket, a launch vehicle that was based on the Titan III. Okay. So each Titan, there's a Titan, what they call the family of rockets, Titan 1, 2, 3, and 4. Titan 1 was the first one. It was a ballistic missile. Titan 2 was developed as a ballistic missile, and it was modified to become a launch vehicle in addition to being a ballistic missile. And then the Titan III was a modification of that, much more powerful than the two versions.
Which is what you had done in the military.
Well, in the military, I worked on Minuteman and Titan II.
Okay.
So I had some experience on Titan II, more in Minuteman, but some, and that helped me in my interview because I was interviewing with the company that built the rocket.
Right.
So if you got the interview went very well. I'll just say that. It was a few questions, and we just started talking shop.
I love it.
And then I'm thinking this is going pretty good.
Good. Okay.
And I got the job offer the same day.
That's awesome.
So anyway, I'm going through this process. Then I get hired by Martin Marietta in Denver, Colorado. I'm with them for 4 years, and then Martin Marietta lost a couple of very important contracts that either evaporated or they had the contract and then they lost it because they shut the program down. A big one was the small missile program, and there were thousands of people working on this program and others. Program cancellation, we got no money coming in, so we can't pay you guys, see you later. And it's very much based on seniority. So even though I wasn't working on small missile, actually someone who was working on small missile that had more seniority than me bumped me out of my job. So I was out of work. Martin Marietta laid off about 5,000 people in a 2-year period. And so after I was in there for 4 years, I got the notice that I was laid off.
Okay.
So for a few months, I tried to find aerospace work in the Denver area because that's where I was living
Right.
at the time, and nobody was hiring. I mean, you got 5,000 people looking for jobs, and only a handful of them
Right.
being hired. So I moved myself to Florida, and I'm thinking if I go to Kennedy Space Center, it's not one company. There are dozens of companies at
Right.
Kennedy Space Center, all aerospace companies, all supporting the work at Kennedy Space
Right.
Center in Cape Canaveral. Certainly, somebody's got to be hiring.
Right.
So I do the same thing. I flood all the contractors with applications and resumes, and a company by the name of Pratt & Whitney. Some people might be familiar with Pratt &
they
Whitney.
might be familiar. They might know one.
They had a space propulsion division. Pratt & Whitney
Yes.
had a space propulsion division that worked on the solid rocket boosters for the space shuttle. And they needed people to come in and support that program.
Okay.
And so I applied for, that and many other jobs, but the first interview I got was with Pratt & Whitney, and they hired me then and there. And so I got
awesome.
hired into the solid rocket booster
Okay.
program. So I was in the shuttle program.
Yes.
I can tell you, getting a layoff notice is never fun.
Right.
It's like, oh, this is a great opportunity. No, you think, I just lost the best job I ever had in the world,
Right.
not knowing what the future held. But because of that layoff, I moved myself to Florida, get hired by a company that's working on the space shuttle, which at that time was like the job to have.
Yes.
And I'm going, okay, this worked out great. This is really
That's
cool.
awesome.
So now I'm in the space shuttle program, and I worked the space shuttle program for 18 years
That is awesome.
until the conclusion of the program.
That's fabulous.
So during this time, I joined the NASA outreach program, where when people want to learn about the space
Sure.
program,
Right.
they put a request into NASA, and that pool of individuals gets a notice saying, hey, we got this group of people that wants
Will you go talk?
Can you go talk to them?
exactly.
Right, exactly. So I saw this group that needed somebody to go to Patrick Air Force Base to support a Civil Air Patrol program for cadets that were there for this for a week-long, what they call a national activity.
Yes,
And about 30 cadets come in, and they get immersed in the space program for a week. And the organizers of the program wanted someone from NASA to come and talk to them about what goes on at
Right.
Kennedy Space Center. So I took that assignment, and then I go and participate. So I walk in, I get ushered into this room. It's a conference room. And these cadets, all in blue uniforms,
Yes.
and the sharpest group of youth I'd ever seen in my life. I mean, that's the first thing that hit me.
They are.
And so I start into my presentation, and they're just laser focused on what I'm saying. And during the Q&A, it's getting questions like they're listening to what I'm saying because this question has to do with something I said, and it was just like amazing to me. And so I said, afterwards, I talked to the leadership of the activity, and I said, tell me more about Civil Air Patrol. I mean, I've heard about it,
Right.
but I didn't know everything about it. And so they filled me in. They said, you could join if you wanted to. And I go, well, that sounds interesting. I might do that.
Yeah.
And so after this activity was over, I filled out the paperwork and joined CAP, and I've been in ever since. For 22 years
love
now.
it.
I've been
Now-
in CAP for 22 years.
That is awesome, and thank you for that. I love that. Now, what are you doing here at Sun and Fun? I know you've been doing forums. Can you tell us a little, as we wrap up, a little
Okay.
bit about the forums that
So-
you're doing? And I know you're doing one today.
I've been doing forums for quite a while, and that's another thing. I found out about Sun and Fun some years ago, and attended with some friends, and it was like, how cool can this be, right? I mean, if you're into aircraft, aviation,
indeed.
and even space, I mean, you got every company that's involved in the aerospace industry, which includes aircraft and all types of space things. So I'm thinking this is cool, and then I found out about the forums.
Yeah.
And I go, all right, well, I'll apply and talk about what I do in space, and
Yes.
what about I do in the space program.
You're like, I could do that.
Yes, right, exactly. So I signed up, started doing forums. The last one I did was a few years ago. This was like before the COVID breakout. So I did one on the X-15.
Okay.
And I talked about the space flights that the X-15 accomplished during its time.
Right.
And a lot of people don't realize that the X-15 actually went into outer space. The pilots of the X-15 who went into outer space qualified as astronauts. So they got astronauts' wings on their uniforms, and they were bona fide astronauts because in order to be an
Yes.
astronaut, you got to go into outer space.
Right.
So the Air Force would award pilots astronaut wings for those pilots that actually flew above what we call the Kármán line.
Right. That's awesome.
Go into outer space. So that was an interesting element, and so I talked about that at the last Sun and Fun. But getting back to joining CAP, I applied, got involved in it, and I learned about all the different aspects of CAP. There's air search and rescue, there's aerospace education, internal and external, public outreach and internal, and the cadet programs. So those are the three main areas of Civil Air Patrol. And I was thinking, well, I want to teach about aerospace education because that's what my background is. I think I could contribute to that. So that was the first track that I entered, and I got qualified to do aerospace education, and I became an aerospace education officer for the unit that I was assigned to. And the unit I joined was the Titus Coco Composite Squadron at the Titusville Airport.
And the composite squadrons are both adults and
cadets, right?
Which is awesome.
A cadet is a composite squadron is a combination of both air search and rescue, which has mainly adults supporting that, and then a cadet program that has Civil Air Patrol.
Colonel, I want to keep you here all day because you are amazing. Let me ask you, can you give just our viewers that may be coming to join us today? We've got a beautiful day here at Sun and Fun today. A little bit about what you're going to be talking about. I know you're talking about some of the changes, and we've got just a couple more minutes. Can you give them, without giving it away, kind of give them a sneak peek at what you're going to talk about?
So it's at 1 o'clock. So if you're interested, you want to attend.
Be there at 1
o'clock here in this building.
Awesome.
And it's about the transformation of Cape Canaveral and Kennedy Space Center. And I go through the history from the first launch off of Cape Canaveral and outline the general activity of the Cape over the many years. And right now we are seeing a resurgence in spaceflight like we had never thought or predicted. And it is due, I'll give this much away, it is due in no small part to a company called SpaceX. The launch rate at Cape Canaveral and Kennedy Space Center, they've got launch pads on both sites, Cape Canaveral and Kennedy Space Center, which are two different installations. The NASA runs Kennedy Space Center, Space Force runs Cape Canaveral. And they've got pads on both locations, and they are popping rockets off left and right. And the launch rate at the Cape is just skyrocketing, if I can use no pun intended, or pun intended, however you want to do it. And I talk about that. I talk about the evolution and what drove the early launch rate and what's currently driving the launch rate now, and give some history and talk about all of the rockets that are going off. So it'll be an interesting, if you're interested in space flight, this would be a good forum to attend.
Absolutely. Now I also understand, just briefly I want to touch on the fact that you also work with the university students at the University of Central Florida and in the engineering program to help them forward their careers.
Correct, right. So after the shuttle program ended, I did get picked up on a post-shuttle contract out at Kennedy Space Center and worked that program. It was called Rocket University. I mean, how cool is that?
That is an awesome
how many people can say they attended Rocket University?
Exactly, I want to go.
Yes,
that is
and
awesome.
that was a program at Kennedy Space Center to train the engineering workforce to bridge the gap between the end of the shuttle program and the follow-on program, which is the program that we're experiencing now called Artemis, that is returning astronauts to the moon. So after Rocket University ended, one of my students at Rocket University was helping out at UCF as adjunct faculty, and they needed more people to help with their engineering students develop rocket projects for their senior design projects. So he said, I know a guy, brought me in, talked to my future supervisor. After 15 minutes, he said, okay, yeah, when can you start? So I said, all right, well, when you need me, I got time on my hands now, and so I'm now on the faculty at University of Central Florida.
I love it, I love it.
So it's keeping me busy.
It is going to be busy, and Colonel, thank you so much. How many years have you been coming to Sun and Fun?
All told, probably 10. It was probably at least 10 years ago when I first experienced, and then I'm coming off. I have missed a few years. I haven't been continual, but now that COVID is essentially over with, I'm back to regular schedule now, and I signed up. This 3 sessions every day, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I'm doing sessions every day.
Colonel, it is such a pleasure to have you here today.
My pleasure,
Thank you so much. And I want to say to our viewers, I promise you, this is going to be a forum they will not want to miss. I want to go. So if they'll let me outside of this, the desk,
1 o'clock.
I want to come see you at 1 o'clock today. Colonel Dahlke, thank you so much. We want to give a shout out to all the Civil Air Patrol, to all the cadets, as well as the squadron members that are here. Thank you for their continued support of Sun and Fun as we celebrate 50 years of Sun and Fun excitement today, and everything aerospace, everything and anything you can think about aerospace education. So ladies and gentlemen, please join us today. We've got a beautiful day. I'm Lori Bradner. I'm with the Florida Aviation Network. We are celebrating live and broadcasting live and in the clear from the Central Florida Aerospace Academy. Come see us right here at the Lakeland International Airport as we celebrate 50 years of Sun and Fun. We look forward to seeing you here.